Welcome back to the Panic Room, guys, for yet another book review. Today we're going to be talking about Night Theater by Vikram Paralakar. I apologize if I am totally butchering that name. He is an Indian author, and this book actually takes place in India, so I got to have all kinds of really awesome little snippets of Indian culture throughout the book, which, you know, if you've watched any of my previous reviews, that I absolutely love that. I love learning about new cultures through different books and novels. You know, I feel like you really get a sense of, you know, what it's like to be in a place when you can read a story that is set there, because there's all these little nuances like the foods and the mannerisms that you might miss if you just like took a class or whatever on that culture. So I love that. I love it when books are set in other places besides my own in America. So let's get into a little bit of an overview here. This was an interesting novel. You know, usually when I go to the library to get some books, I've done, you know, like a preliminary search, usually on my Goodreads account, on my to read. I'll have that link down below. Please follow me on Goodreads. And this was not even on my radar. This book was nowhere. I had not seen it anywhere. I had not seen any book reviews on BookTube about it, nothing. And it just sort of popped out at me. It has an absolutely beautiful cover. I really think it embodies a lot of the colorful aspects that you see in a lot of Indian media, at least in my opinion. And yeah, it just sort of leapt out at me. And I have to tell you, honestly, like I picked it up, I read the blurb, and I actually set it back down. I was going to get another novel, but something told me like, no, I think you need to read this one. It just, something about it sort of pulled me in. I have to say it tweaked my like love for religion and culture and philosophy, because it speaks in the little blurb in the book about it being like a moral conundrum kind of a deal, which I will tell you, and I don't believe this is a spoiler, I will tell you that this is, if that scares you, if the idea of reading a really moral book scares you, don't be. This book it definitely dealt with some moral aspects to life, but it was not in your face, at least to me. I did not think that it was preachy or anything of the sort. I really think that it did morals well, because it left it sort of up to the reader to draw their own conclusions. It didn't give you like, this is how you should think. One thing that I really liked about this book is most of the characters largely remain unnamed, and even the ones that they do mention the names of, like the surgeon, and I'm not going to butcher his name, it's like Sahib, I think. Anyway, most of the time they do not call these people by their names. Some of them, like I said, are not even named, and I'm talking main characters here. And I really think that that kind of lends itself to the reader being able to kind of put in more of themselves into the story, if that makes sense. If you are a lover of literature, which I feel like if you're here watching this video, you are, then you have probably seen there's a lot of these different studies and these different, you know, papers and talks about how they'll take a book and they'll apply it in a lot of different ways. The one that pops into my head right now is like Dante's Inferno, about how, you know, they're going the different layers of hell, and how, you know, Dante represents this and Virgil represents that, you know, very much, you know, inflecting something that isn't necessarily in the story per se, but taking it and sort of reflecting back a bigger lesson or a bigger idea. You know, I hope I'm saying that correct. I hope you guys are following me on that. This is one of those books, I feel like it could be. I can totally see this book being taught in like a philosophy class, and people drawing the characters out as different aspects or different sides of a philosophical argument. And I feel like that'll make more sense once we get into the review. But basically, we're following a surgeon in a very poor Indian village, and pretty much the only help he has in his clinic is someone referred to only as the pharmacist. And it's a younger woman. She's married, and her husband are very much friends of the surgeon, in that they are very devoted to him for all his help and giving her work and things like that. The surgeon himself is a very interesting character. He is almost cynical, I guess would be a good word for it. He does have a little bit of a change over the course of the novel, but he definitely comes off as very cynical. He's had, some things happen in his life with his career that have really just made him kind of mad at the world. And I get it. I totally get it. Part of this book is dealing with the idea of the bureaucracy of life and how sometimes things just are not fair. They're just not. And there's nothing more you can say about it. Life just isn't fair. And the surgeon is sort of, at this point in his career, just fed up. He can't stand the bureaucracy. He's lost his passion for what he went in to do. It says that he was a coroner and then he studied to be a surgeon, and he's apparently a really damn fine surgeon, according to his reputation. But here he is in this poor little village and he can't stand the people. It's almost like he's craving this, this renown, this ability to kind of showcase what he can do, and he just feels very stifled in the small town, which I feel like we can all relate to. I mean, I feel like everybody has been stifled at one point in your life knowing you could just do more if this happened, right? I really like the surgeon, I do. He does come off as very cynical, and he is definitely what you would picture as a surgeon. And I'm not trying to categorize all surgeons this way, but when I think of a surgeon, I think of someone who is very logical, scientific, to the point. And that's the way this surgeon is. He doesn't really have time for flowery thoughts, or he doesn't really have time for anything as far as silliness or ignorance is concerned. He just doesn't. It's almost like, I've seen it all. I know what I can do and what I can't do, and if I can't help you, get the hell out. So, and I mean, I appreciate his, frankness in a lot of ways. Sometimes I can see where it would rub people the wrong way, but, he seems like a pretty decent character. And as the privileged reader, when we know his backstory, you kind of understand why he feels the way he does. Before we really get into the spoilers and the parts of this book that I want to talk about, I have to say that, touching back on what I was saying about how you can pull characters out and they can be representations of a bigger idea, the two main characters that stood out to me were the surgeon, of course, and the pharmacist. And the reason I pull those two out right in the beginning of this video is because I feel like the surgeon could be the more logical part of our mind, maybe the survivalist part of our mind, whereas the pharmacist is portrayed more as the very emotional, more spiritual side. She's the one that's wanting to bring in, for example, the goddess Durga. She puts up a calendar because she wanted to have some little idols in there for the patients to, get some comfort from, but the surgeon was like, absolutely not. So she gets the idea to have a calendar there, which I thought was kind of ingenious, actually, kind of the best of both worlds. And so I feel like she is definitely more of the feelings and the emotional side, whereas the surgeon is your logic and reason. So now maybe that's just my psych side inflecting too much on this story, but that's what I gathered from it. And you will see that as we go along. I can definitely point out pieces of the story that I feel like really embody that line of thinking. So let's get into some of this story. Obviously, spoilers ahead. This is a very easy read. It's very short. It's very digestible. And like I said in the beginning, it's not an overly moral book. You're not reading, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita. You're not reading any of that with this story. It's definitely an easily digestible moral story, really. So we open with our surgeon, and he is in the clinic. He's actually getting ready to give out polio vaccines. And he is very frustrated. His shipment of the polio vaccines are late. He has all these people lining up with their babies, and they're screaming, and it's hot, and there's bugs, and he's over it. He's just over it. The pharmacist, however, is, tending to the kids and making sure they're happy and, bringing him tea, making sure he eats. She is very much the backbone. And you find out over the course of the book that he actually does appreciate her. He loves her to death. And I really didn't think it would go that way because at first glance, you think oh, he's just a tyrant. But no, he actually does care for her, and he does appreciate all that she does for him, which I thought was very cool. We see that there is this city official that comes by, and the surgeon just sort of gives him down the road hey, I'm having to put my own money into this place. You guys pay me peanuts, and, then you want to come tell me what to do, because the city official kind of accuses him of padding the books a little bit. And that just sends him over the edge, as it should, because he is like working with nothing. Over the course of the novel, it's talking about how he has like 2 bottles of lidocaine. That's it for this whole town. 2 bottles of lidocaine. He is having to like, patch up farmers that have cut themselves, women who have like broken pottery or something and cut their hands. He's working with nothing. And he does often take his money and buy things like bandages or tubing or needles or whatever it is that they need. So I can totally get him being a little frustrated when, a city official accuses him of cheating the system. So he kind of sends him on his way, with his tail between his legs. The surgeon's packing up for the night. He's writing in his little ledger about all the polio vaccines he gave, and this family shows up. And it's a father, a mother who is pregnant, very far along in her pregnancy actually, and an 8-year-old boy. And the father's like, you've got to help us. We need your help. And he's like, if it's something bad, I have to send you to the city. I have nothing here. I can do pretty much the bare bones. And they're like, no, we can't go to the city. I need you to help us. And it starts to get a little violent. Like the pharmacist gets held by the man, and he's like, you will help us, almost like a hostage thing. But you kind of get the sense that there's really no danger from this family man. I feel like he is just desperate. It's not that he wants to hold them up or take their money or hurt them. He's just desperate. That's all that comes through with this first encounter. It's just this family's desperation for some help. With the pharmacist and the surgeon standing right there, he starts to show them their wounds. And the man is definitely just tore up on one side of his body. It looks like he's been stabbed and like ripped open, like from his ribs down the side of his stomach. The little boy, similar injury, he's got some injury into his abdomen area. And then the wife, just completely across the throat, a terrible gash. Not so much like they almost beheaded her, but an awful, terrible gash. And the surgeon and the pharmacist both are like, there's no way you survive this. How are you walking right now? How are you talking and not in pain? There's no blood, nothing. And he's like, well, because we're dead. Dun, dun, dun. And the surgeon's like, excuse me? And I mean, the surgeon didn't think like they were in their right mind. He thought like maybe he was tired and he was dreaming or whatever. But the pharmacist is just flipping because she believes in all this. She tells the story later in the book about how she saw a ghost in her village before she got married as a young woman. So she believes in all this, and she thinks it's like a bad omen, which I think is really cool because they talk about like different omens and things, and I'm assuming that's probably something that's ingrained in Indian culture, which I thought was neat to kind of see that glimpse into the way that they would look at a situation like this versus someone in another culture. So yeah, the family's like, yeah, we're dead. We were at a carnival and we got attacked and they stole all our money and our jewelry and killed us and left us on the side of the road. And the father was like, but I need you to help me. You're the only one. You're the person that we were sent to by the angel. And the surgeon's like, hold up. By the what? Because he's still like, you guys are insane. Like, I'm dreaming, you're on drugs, something. The guy's like, I know it's hard to believe, but he said that we had to come here. We couldn't cross the boundary of this village ever. Like, even after you help us, like, we have to live here and die here. Like, we can't ever leave this village ever again. And the surgeon was like, okay, all right. But you see, like, going back to what I was saying, you see this logical part of his brain, even though he is faced with this, like, crazy situation, he's like, okay, I'm looking at this woman's carotid artery, and there's no blood coming from it. I'm looking at this little boy's rib, pretty much like sticking out of a wound, and there's no blood coming from it. There's no pain. So he knows something is happening. He knows something's going on. So what would you expect someone like that to do? Fall back on your reason. He's like, okay, I can send them away or I can help them. And him and the pharmacist kind of confer a little bit, and she's like, I think it's a bad omen, the dead are walking, oh my God. And so after everything, after a little bit of back and forth, the surgeon agrees, like, okay, I'll help you. This after tons of pleading from the dad, right? So the dad says, take my son, take my wife, let's do them first, I can be last. Which, good for him. He's a good family man, good father, good husband. So they take the little boy first. Mind you, he's 8 years old. And, he's terrified, obviously. So the dad goes in the surgery room with him. And as the surgeon is operating on him, you get, in my vlog for this video, I call this some body horror. And in a way, I can see where it would be if you are definitely squeamish about stuff like that. But for me, it wasn't so much body horror as it was just incredibly descriptive. Keep that in mind if you want to pick this book up. If you are squeamish about like body parts and bones and blood, this might not be the novel for you because there's a lot in this book. I don't so much think of it as horror though. It was laid out so logically, like it was just the surgeon saying, okay, I have to do this, like having to take the clots out of, the boy's wound and having to do this with his ribs. And for me, that wasn't really horror, but it lent itself to the realism of the situation. So for me, I was like, if I was the surgeon or if I was the pharmacist, what would I think walking into this room, seeing this bloodless little boy laying there with no pain, no screaming, and just this wide gaping wound and this surgeon digging out body parts? Like, I can see where that would be a little horrific, don't you? So as the surgeon is talking to the father, he's operating on the boy, it's going well. He sees where there could be a lot of problems because the father says that the angel told him that in the morning at dawn, they would actually come back to life with blood and pain and everything that comes with life. So the surgeon is having to like tie up veins and arteries and stuff that have been damaged, but he doesn't know if he did like the best job in the world because he can't tell if there's any blood oozing, right? Which I know this much about the medical field, and I can totally see where he's talking about. Like he said, all the normal signs of human life or human body aren't there. There's no heartbeat, there's no blood flow. Their chest rises and falls, but they can go without breathing. Like the lungs don't expand, so to speak, unless they make sure to inhale. So I hope that makes sense. So there's none of these like signs there. Not to mention the surgeon talks about how he used to work in the city. He used to be this big renowned surgeon, but he was discredited because apparently he didn't do right by this one official, and the guy went to another surgeon who just happened to be a colleague of his who was kind of dirty, and that surgeon smeared his name saying that he wasn't worthy to be a surgeon and that he tried to bribe him to not say anything about his mistakes. So our surgeon in the story is discredited. That's why he ended up in this tiny little village, right? So now we understand why he hates the bureaucracy so much. Like this whole I'm going to bribe you, and if you don't pay me this much, then I'm going to do this to you. Like he can't stand that, which I agree. I don't like that crap either. So we find out a little bit more about the family too. We find out that they actually went to the afterlife when they died, and the father, this got me. The father describes a very interesting afterlife. Now, I do have a little bit of a background in theology, and I absolutely love Indian religion, but if you know anything about it, you know that it is massive. They have numerous gods and goddesses, so I do not claim to be a master of Indian culture at all. And so the father, when he's describing this afterlife, it was very new to me, and it was almost horrific in and of itself because it was so bleak. He's talking about how there's just this plane of nothingness and people just wonder. And that there's almost this culture and this society of the dead where these prophets have risen up and say oh, we know where God is and all this. And then he starts in about the afterlife's bureaucracy system and about how there's all these levels. He called it an angel, but then he kind of flips the script and says no, it was really a bureaucrat, like an official. And the surgeon was excuse me, there's offices and stuff. He said, yeah, and they don't even know if it ever ends. They don't know if you eventually get up to God or whatever. It's just official after official after official after official. And that some of them have powers, and that it just so happens that this angel or this official had the power to send them back. So that's why we're here, and he's and we were told to come to you. And he is just very, very, the whole time, falling at the surgeon's feet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are the best. We are always grateful. You are the greatest man ever. He's just constantly tripping over himself, giving the surgeon compliments. And the surgeon isn't one to eat that kind of stuff up. He's I'm here to do a job. I think you owe me an explanation, which is why they're talking about this. But that's the long and short of it. That's it. So he finishes with the son. Surgeon feels pretty good about that. He moves on to the wife. Now, remember, the wife is pregnant, very far along, actually, getting ready to deliver, kind of pregnant. And when he unwraps, her sari or her shawl from around her neck, he sees, there's a lot of damage here. He doesn't even understand how the woman's speaking. He is assuming that this is just something with, the angel powers that reanimated her body. So as he's doing her surgery, he sees, this is going to be super tricky. This woman is going to be in a lot of pain once the life returns back to her. And, yeah, I'm not sure she's going to make it. I can do the best I can, but I'm not sure. And you see him have, this real crisis of conscience because he really doesn't want to have that conversation with the father to tell him, your wife's probably going to die. This is just too bad. This is way too bad. I don't think I can fix this. And he even has sent the pharmacist's husband, middle of the night, to the next city over to get some supplies. And he still doesn't think he can save this woman. So the whole time while he's operating on the woman, she's not speaking very much, obviously, because of the nature of her injury. He notices how she can go completely still, like a dead person. No breathing, no nothing. And he starts to have these thoughts to himself because he has a lot of time to think. He starts to have these thoughts to himself about, well, I could just get out of this situation by sabotaging the surgeries. Then they're all dead in the morning, And, and he starts thinking through this whole thing about how he could, hide the bodies and all this. But then he kind of has this whole, again, a crisis of conscience where he's like, no, that's not my job. My job as a surgeon is to try to instill life. And so then he goes down this road of how, a surgeon's job or a doctor's job is to, preserve life. Whereas here he is operating on the dead, and what kind of a mind trip this is for him, and how he's, kind of thinking back through his own training and, how he thinks I'm not good enough for this, but yet this angel told these people that I am. And, so what does that mean? What do they think of me in the afterlife? Stuff like that. So you start to see him, second guess himself, and it's completely understandable. I cannot imagine what I would do in a similar situation. I mean, I can totally see trying to just kind of look around for the closest possible exit, because imagine getting faced with something like that. It would be bad enough because, and I mean, God love the people who do it, but it would be bad enough to have someone's life in your hands. But in a situation like that, where these people have already died once, and it's up to you to make sure this doesn't happen again, I mean, talk about pressure. So he finishes with the woman's surgery, and he's just not thrilled with that. He does not think she's going to survive once the life returns back to them at dawn. So he brings the man in. He's operating on him, and we do get a little bit more graphic detail about this one because he has to spread the man's ribs with his hands to get into to clear out his chest cavity where he's bled into his chest so much because he doesn't have forceps. So that's a little gruesome. But he starts talking, and that's when it kind of comes out about how, the man was speaking to the official and how he could summon him through prayer and all of this. And they start to talk about what they want to do with the woman because, she's pregnant. And that gets the surgeon thinking, is the baby dead? Because the woman was stabbed here. And obviously in the real world, if a woman who is pregnant passes away, of course the fetus is going to follow. But in this world, is the baby dead too? Or did it also get reanimated? So they decide to do a cesarean section. The surgeon I think he says he's done this once before. But they have had births in that clinic. So the pharmacist is actually you see her kind of excited for once because this whole time she's just been absolutely terrified. Absolutely terrified. You see her kind of start to open up when the woman is in surgery, when she's talking to the husband. But, she has this sweetness about her. She wants to make the little boy more comfortable because you can tell he's worried about his mom while she's in surgery. The boy's not having it though. And I don't know, I found myself really liking the pharmacist. She just seems very caring, and she tells the story to the husband that an astrologer told her once that in a previous life she had cared for her husband on his deathbed, and because of that good karma she was going to constantly meet her husband in her current life, and they would be happy together, and she would always be this humble servant that got, not good luck, but had an easy life because she cared so much for other people. So I thought that was just kind of a neat little glimpse into Indian culture when she starts talking about the astrologist. I can definitely see how she's the other side of the coin for our surgeon, and how because of that they sort of blend beautifully together. I don't know, I just really found myself liking her. I felt she was very, just very personable, and she's just the kind of person that you want around when you are in need. I would imagine that she is definitely like your nursing type of person, someone who would choose that profession to care for another person at their lowest point. So the woman is in surgery again. They're having the cesarean section, and unfortunately the baby is not moving when they take it out. But, this is not necessarily a bad thing. They think, well, maybe life will return to it once dawn comes, just the same way as the rest of the family, So this isn't really necessarily a tragedy, so to speak. So the pharmacist makes up a little crib in a box for the baby, and they just have to kind of wait at this point. They talk about how the whole family has this bluish tinge. And as somebody who is not a huge zombie person, I really appreciated how they didn't go down the road of like creepy zombie. They just sort of showed how there was a few little absences of life. The lack of having to sleep or eat, or the color of their skin was bluish. Things like that. I appreciated those little attentions to detail without like going full zombie. So the surgeon steps out for a minute, starts to hear this fight happening behind him. He goes in, and it's the man and the woman, and they're just going at it, and the woman's like, I can't believe you lied to me, and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you talking about? What lie? So it all starts to come out. The man is like sobbing, he's very apologetic, and the surgeon's pretty much like, shut up, tell me what the problem is. So get this. The official in the afterlife, the one that gave him this ability to come back, for this one evening so they could find the surgeon and get fixed, he pretty much was like, yeah, this might not work. So what is he, like a junior partner or something? Like he hasn't had full mastery of his skills yet? And that's not even the worst part. So the father says that the official told him that whoever helps them or comes in contact with them that finds out that they're dead and their whole situation with, coming back to life, if it doesn't work and he has to take them back into the afterlife, he's going to take all them with him because, he can't have this secret getting out. So you're telling me that the surgeon, the pharmacist, and the pharmacist's husband, by the way, because remember he went to get the supplies, all of them are just going to like drop down dead because they were nice enough to help these people. And so the surgeon is livid. The surgeon is so mad. He's like, here, I helped you. Now I can't trust you anymore. And the father's like, I'm sorry. I just wanted to get my family back. The wife is completely mad. She's like, at least we were all together in the afterlife. So you mean to tell me like it might work for two of us and not the last one and all that? She's just going off. She tries to take the kids and go to the village boundary so that they can all just drop down dead and die. And, the surgeon's like, wait a second. We've worked really hard tonight. Let's just wait until dawn, see what happens. So before we can actually get to the end of the book, we see that same official in this life, the one that came by the surgeon before and was accusing him of like padding his books. We see him come back. And he's talking about how like he got so pissed that he got sent away earlier that day or the previous day that he went back and did all this research, and he finds out how the surgeon got discredited in the city, with the bribing and all that. So the surgeon has to give up his life savings to this guy just so he'll leave him alone. So we see kind of like a full circle coming back to the bureaucracy, right? And so the surgeon is he's done. He hasn't slept. He's had all these like hours long surgeries. He's dealt with like this whole thing about operating on dead people and dead people talking to him. And he's just done. Absolutely done. So then he goes back in to see the family, and it comes out that, dawn wasn't really the cutoff point. The official was like, I don't know how long it's going to take. So again, the wife is just, she's got like tubes coming out of her neck and all that. The wife is just done. She's like, I cannot believe you. You mean that we're going to have to exist in this weird semi-dead-ish state for God knows how long? But in the midst of this argument, they hear a little cry come from the box. And so the pharmacist is like, the baby, the one that they delivered via cesarean section, starts to move and make noise. But she doesn't cry. So the surgeon goes over, he's examining her, and, the husband's like, what's going on? The parents are just all in a tizzy now. And he's like, she's not crying because she's not hungry or cold or anything. She doesn't even have a heartbeat. So the baby is just like her family, but with no wounds. So it's like, wonder why, Like, I wonder why that happened. Why is the baby coming to life, but not? Very interesting. So the surgeon's looking her over, and all of a sudden he looks up to speak to the family, and they're gone. Dun, dun, dun. He has no idea what's happening. He is so tired at this point that he's like, we got to take care of what's in front of us. Again, going back to that logical side of his brain, he knows that there's this infant in front of him, and he's like, we got to take care of it. We've got to take care of her, figure out what we can do. So they get the idea that they're just going to shut up the clinic. The pharmacist, her husband, and the surgeon are just going to shut up the clinic, sleep, and then figure out what to do with this baby. So they're kind of like shutting everything down, locking the windows, locking the doors. Everyone's patting down for the night. And you see how the surgeon is just like welcoming a rest, welcoming sleep. And, he's thinking about the events of the day and about how, everyone is going to end up in this state, in this dead state. But maybe we're given this life to feel, whether that's pain or pleasure or, even the simple act of like eating and drinking. We're given this life to feel something, and about how sweet that really is to actually be able to experience stuff, no matter what it is. It might not be good, but the idea of being able to experience and how much of a gift that really is. And, and the pharmacist, she is kind of just all encompassed with this baby. You get the impression that they don't have children. So she is just all about, taking care of this baby and making sure it's okay. And, she wants to make sure that it's done right by. And so you start to see the village is coming alive below them, below the clinic. And people are getting up, they're going to work, having breakfast, doing all the things, the hustle and bustle of a village. And then it says, if you look at the baby, you start to see pink come back to her cheeks. And she takes a deep breath and prepares to announce herself to the world. And that's the end. I thought that was awesome. And I really think it leaves it wide open. Like, why just the baby, right? Where did the family go? Why is it succeeding? This whole thing from the afterlife where they return them back to the world of the living. Why did it succeed with the baby? I feel like it's just wide open for interpretation here. I was thinking something like, we can't change death, even though this family tried and tried and tried all night to change death, but new life always brings us new beginnings. And where the baby, what better symbol of new life, right? Where the baby was born with no injury, there was nothing to hold against her. She really didn't belong in the afterlife. I don't know. Tell me what you think. If you read this book, I really want to know what you think. It's definitely wide open, and I think that this could be a wonderful discussion. So guys, that's it. Thank you so much for coming and clicking on this video. Please like and subscribe. It would help me out a lot. And check out the box below. I'll have my Goodreads listed. Add me on Goodreads. I would love to talk to you over there, maybe read some reviews. And guys, thank you so much for coming to the Panic Room. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.